everybody. Hope you guys are still hanging in there. I have, as you're probably used to, made a quick PowerPoint to talk about American Beauty. I just rewatched the movie this morning, and I haven't watched it in a few years, and I don't know if I like it. I mean, I sometimes, I think about it, and I'm like, yeah, that movie's really smart, and then sometimes when I'm, rewatching it, I'm like, some of this is kind of dumb. I have, very mixed feelings about this movie. And, to the point where I was like, should I have picked this for this class? I don't even know. I feel weird about it. So you might also have had that reaction of, what in the world is this movie about? I don't get it. And that's fine, because I'm also, in that boat right now, even though I'm the one that picked it. So I have a quick PowerPoint, and I hope that going through some of my ideas maybe can help you understand what I was thinking and some of the things I think about it. So let's just jump in. Let's see. The movie, just so you know, it's not a recent movie, which you should be able to tell really from a lot of things about it, particularly the decor and stuff, but it's 1999. What is important to remember about that date is it's pre-9/11, and, 9/11 really changed a lot about the way that Americans think about everyday life. For instance, The Road, which we watched, that book came out in 2000. Oh my gosh, I can't remember the name, but it was after 9 or the date, but it was after 9/11. So we were seeing the potential for destruction and fear and apocalypse and all that stuff, right? Well, not that we didn't have that perception before 9/11, but it wasn't quite the same. World War II had happened, but it didn't happen here. You know what I mean? 9/11 changed things because there was a violent act that was committed on our soil. So it changed a lot. So before 9/11, there was a different concern. This movie won, just so you know, Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Screenplay, Best Cinematography. But even though it had all those Oscars, there was still some mixed reception. Maybe we can get into that here. So I tried to, in thinking about, why I picked this for a horror filmed class, or a horror-themed American Lit class, I thought about, what exactly is so terrifying in this? It's not a horror movie, but there's, a lot of, it's an anxiety movie. Everybody's got some anxiety in here. I think one of the big pieces of anxiety that's present is the fear of the mundane. And I mean that in a lot of senses. First, from the quote I picked here, Angela, the girl that Kevin Spacey, I don't remember, Lester, has fallen in love with, she says, I can't think of anything worse than being ordinary. And, we might identify with that, ourselves, but also, this is to a huge degree. We all want to be special, but this is we all also want stability. And here, these characters that are really quite stable, if you think about it, nobody's homeless, you know what I'm saying? People have cars and jobs, and, finally that dog jumped out of my lap. She's driving me crazy. All right, but these people have the basic things that you would think people would want, a family and all that stuff. Everybody's healthy, but they're still just not satisfied for some reason. So that's part of it, I think, that there's this fear of getting everything you want and then that not being enough. We'll talk about that here in my next couple of slides too, but before I jump into the American dream idea, which I want to get to, there's also, I think, a fear of not being mundane enough, being different. So this is the 90s, so people maybe are not quite as progressive now. Gay marriage is still not legal in 99. But we have Ricky's dad here, who has this huge fear of his own sexuality, right? He is to the degree that, when his two gay neighbors come by and give him, a housewarming gift, he's like, you said y'all are partners. Partners in what? Clearly they're partners in life, they're together, but he has this, homophobia, and because he has some of those, proclivities himself, he is clearly has some homosexual tendencies, but he's afraid of those things because they make him not normal. I would say Lester is also concerned about emasculation. He is concerned about not having control over his house. That idea of the man of the house or whatever, or being in control and leading the house. All that's, whatever, fine and different. But he's concerned because he's not doing a good job of that. His wife nor his daughter respect him. He's lost his ability to connect with them, and then he's also clearly lost Carol as a sexual partner. So he's like worried about, his like macho self being built up through the interactions that he has with other women, which is part of what I think he's attracted to Angela so much. Now my dog's gonna bark. Come here, Scout. We'll see. All right, so this is what I was alluding to a minute ago. Fear of the American dream. This is a quote from where, you remember where Jane hits her daughter in her bedroom, like slaps her in the face? I hate that scene. And it makes you hate Carol. Or Carolyn, whatever her name is. Like, this woman, right? She comes in. This is what I want to point you to, though. She says, I don't feel like having a Kodak moment here, which means, like, Hallmark or something would be another, like, good reference there. Like, I don't feel like being lovey-dovey and making up with you or whatever. And she says, you ungrateful brat, look at everything you have. When I was your age, we lived in a duplex. We didn't even own a house. So the mom here has this idea that all the things that they have, like a $400 couch that was actually really ugly, provides them with all they could ever want. Why wouldn't you be happy if we have this house with a picket fence and all my roses and me and your dad who are successful entrepreneurs, blah, 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 or she is, as being a realtor. So, like, there's this concern, like I was saying a minute ago, you can get all that you want, but still not be happy. That's horrifying. Like, you can, and if you, like, you're like, what do you mean by American dream? This is, like, a bigger conversation that I would have loved to have, like, in an actual class dedicated to it, but, like, the idea of the American dream is that you buy a house, it has a fence, you have 2 kids, just the typical, like, everyone's happy, somebody plays baseball probably, like, it's just, like, the standard, like, middle class, just, you buy your groceries for free, nobody's an alcoholic, like, everybody's just, happy, they go to church on Sunday too, like, that standard, and there's nothing wrong with living a life like that if you're happy, but what the characters in this film are realizing is, that middle class ideal, that standard of, like, just being normal and living your life could be awful. Like, it may not be fulfilling. And so that's scary, right? If what you've been reaching for your whole life, career-wise and whatever else, ends up, like, not fulfilling you, that can be, like, kind of terrifying. So this fear of, like, the American dream not holding up, I think is, a major concern here. But the title of this movie isn't about American dream or horror or anything. It's about beauty. American beauty. And there's this iconic scene with the trash. I'm sure you remember this because you're like, what? Ricky has this footage where he filmed that trash bag flowing in the wind. And I hope for the rest of your life that when you see a trash bag or a piece of garbage floating around outside, you're like, you know what that makes me think of? 2130 and American Beauty. And it will, I'm telling you, it'll be in your mind forever now because it's a thing you see all the time. And it's not, if I see trash in my yard, I pick it up. Like, it's not like look at this beautiful thing. It's, shit, somebody threw some garbage out the window and I'm having to pick it up. Usually it's kind of what you think, like somebody littered. It's not really even something maybe that you haven't thought about at all. You just pick it up. But Ricky, who I haven't talked about very much yet, but he's like the artist in this. He's like the visionary representation in the film, I think. And this is the quote when he's talking about that piece of trash. He says, it was one of those days when it's a minute away from snowing and there's this electricity in the air. You can almost hear it, right? And this bag was just dancing with me, like a little kid begging me to play with it for 15 minutes. Can you imagine watching trash for 15 minutes? Anyway, that's the day I realized there was this entire life behind things and this incredibly benevolent force that wanted me to know there was no reason to be afraid ever. So he's like, I don't know if he's talking about God, like, the God that we think of, like the Christian God, or if he's thinking of, like, I don't know, like some mystical force that makes things move like the wind, and it gave him purpose. He said, the video is a poor excuse, I know, but it helps me remember. I need to remember. Sometimes there's so much beauty in the world, I feel like I just can't take it, and my heart is going to cave in. Which, I'll be honest, to me that's a pretty cliche sentence, like, the beauty, it just makes my heart cave in. What does that even mean? Like, that's a weird thing to say. But Ricky's like crying when he says this. Like, he's passionate about this trash. And you can ask yourself this question, and maybe somebody will ask it in the discussion board, like, what does the trash represent? For me, it represents, I don't even know, this is one interpretation, something worth noticing about the mundane, something that's worth it's like noticing something mundane and seeing that that's okay and beautiful. Like, whereas the family, like Jane's family and her parents, they can't be pleased with the mundaneness of their life. Ricky sees something that's just so ordinary, and he's like, that actually is beautiful. Like, there's something beautiful in just the everyday, like, life. He's not reaching to be I don't know, he's just selling drugs. I'm confused about it, I guess. But I do think it has something to do with, like, seeing something average and being able to have value in it. Whereas the family often, especially the parents, cannot be pleased with that, which is average. I hope I explained that in some kind of way. I don't think it's clear or easy to explain as part of the problem here. Like, I don't think there's just one meaning or one interpretation for it, but I think, that's maybe one way to think about it. It's like a positive moment, the trash. Because it's like, oh, that thing kind of has some meaning. It can make me think of God, even though it's mundane. The whole point here, this is the last line of the movie, because if you recall, it's confusing. Lester dies, he gets shot, and my first thought the first time I watched this was like, that his wife did it, obviously. Like, that's what I was thinking. But no, what happens is, Ricky's dad, he approaches Lester in like a sexual way because he thinks that Lester and Ricky have a relationship, but that's actually misinterpreted, and Lester's not attracted to men. So when Ricky's dad kisses him, he's like, whoa, dude, that's actually, like, not my speed. And Lester gets really embarrassed to the degree that he's the one who actually comes and shoots Lester at the end. So the whole movie is being narrated by Lester, even though he's dead. If you remember at the beginning of the movie, he says, isn't it interesting to know that you're going to die? Like, what if you knew you're going to die at the end of the year or something? So he's, like, narrating this in the moment of his death, and that's where this last line comes from too. Like, he's narrating post-death, which is a weird choice and something that you could question too. If you're, like, lost for what to question in your discussion board, somebody could ask, like, why is he allowed to narrate when he's dead? Like, what's the author intending for us to recognize by him having a voice post-shooting? But anyway, this is the last line. He says, I guess I could be pretty pissed off about what happened to me, but it's hard to stay mad when there's so much beauty in the world. And recall, right before he had been shot, he told Angela she's the most beautiful thing he's ever seen. They're about to get it on. And Angela tells him, actually, I'm a virgin. And he's like, what? And he sees her completely differently. He wraps her up. He asks her about his daughter. He actually becomes a father for the first time in the entire movie. He also is looking at a picture of his wife and daughter right when he gets shot, which is implying that he actually was for the first time seeing the beauty of, like, something that wasn't just a fantasy. He was, like, coming back to reality and accepting his life. And then, ironically, he gets shot right in that moment. Another good question for a discussion board. Why is in that moment of, like, clarity and grounding the moment where he gets shot? So when he says, I see so much beauty in the world, to me, I think he's talking about his mundane life. He, like, actually had come to see, like, whoa, this is actually, worth it. But he says, sometimes I feel like I'm seeing it all at once and it's too much. My heart fills up like a balloon that's about to burst. And then I remember to relax and stop trying to hold on to it. And then it flows through me like rain, and I can't feel anything but gratitude for every single moment of my stupid little life. You have no idea what I'm talking about, I'm sure, but don't worry, you will someday. So he, like, speaks to us. You, me and you. We don't understand it now, but we will one day. He's like, I don't know if he's saying, like, you're going to die one day too, and it'll be in that moment of death that you recognize that life is actually worth living. I don't know. I don't know what he's implying that we realize in those moments. But he is seeming, like, by the end of the film, he has accepted life, just a plain version of life, is beautiful. It reminds me, I know I'm not trying to keep talking about Corona, but, like, we're all kind of stuck at home. I hope y'all are stuck at home, because you should be staying home. Everybody's supposed to be staying home. But, like, when you go to the grocery store now, it's kind of like, oh, this is kind of nice. Like, I might put on some mascara to go to the grocery store because I'm going to be out in the world. And something super mundane all of a sudden now has, like, big significance for us because so much has been taken away out of our daily lives, right? Like, we miss what we used to get bored with. Like, we used to be bored or unsatisfied to, like, go to class, but I would give anything to go to class with you guys right now, right? Like, that would just be amazing. So I think that's part of this film, like, recognizing how the little, it's cliche, but the little things in life actually do have purpose and fulfill us, even though we can, like, kind of get unsatisfied. So I hope that helps. Take the quiz, do the discussion, and I'll check in with y'all next week.